Welcome, dear listeners. As you settle in, let the calming embrace of the night surround you. Tonight, we journey to the village of Argona, where whispers of ancient tales fill the air and legends await to be discovered. Join me as we explore the enchanting story of the Dragon's Eye, a gem of immense power, beckoning those brave enough to seek it. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow the soothing rhythm of my voice to guide you into a world of dreams where magic and mystery await. Let the night cradle you gently into slumber. In a time when the winds whispered secrets and the mountains cradled forgotten lore, there was a tale passed from one trembling mouth to another. It spoke of a gem, no ordinary stone, but a thing alive with ancient power, imbued with the very essence of a dragon. They called it the Dragon's Eye, for it was said that the gemstone gleamed with the fire of a creature long thought extinct, the last remnant of a beast that once commanded the heavens. The eye was not found in any market, nor could it be taken from some hidden vault. It was said to reside in a place where only the brave or the foolish dared tread, a temple lost to time, swallowed by the earth and guarded by forces unseen. There, nestled among the bones of the forgotten, the eye waited, pulsing with the unspent wrath of the dragon who had given it life. And yet, despite its fearsome origins, it was the eye's promise of power that lured souls toward it. It was said the eye could see into the future, revealing paths yet to be walked, decisions yet to be made. Kingdoms rose and fell with a single gaze into its depths. Rulers desperate to secure their thrones, scholars obsessed with unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos, and warriors seeking an edge in battle all sought the eye. But the stories always ended the same way. Those who dared to look into the gemstone lost themselves, ensnared by the endless possibilities it revealed. They became nothing more than wandering souls, trapped between the world of the living and the domain of fate. But these were just whispers, weren't they? Stories woven by fireside, passed down by those who had never seen the eye, nor the temple that held it. And yet, in the small windswept village of Argona, tucked beneath jagged cliffs where the sea howled against the rocks, the legend was more than a tale. It was a prophecy. The villagers spoke of the oracle, a woman who had seen many things, things beyond comprehension. Her hair, white as the moonlight that crept through the cracks in her stone hut, had once been raven dark, but the years, and perhaps something more, had drained her. She seldom left her dwelling now, speaking only when the tides of fate demanded it. And so, for years, her voice had remained silent until one night when the winds howled louder than they ever had before, and the sea roared as if something ancient stirred beneath its depths. That night, the oracle spoke. "They will come for the eye," she whispered, her voice raspy, barely above a breath. And with it, the future shall be rewritten. But be warned, the eye sees all, and the price for such knowledge is not a coin easily paid. The village elders gathered in secret after her word spread. They had long since given up on the idea of the eye as anything more than myth. But there was something in the oracle's warning that clung to the air, like the taste of salt on a storm-washed wind. Something was coming. Perhaps a traveller, perhaps something far worse. Whatever it was, they feared it would bring the old legends crashing into their quiet lives, stirring up dangers that had lain dormant for centuries. Far from Argona, beyond the horizon where the mountains clawed at the sky, a figure moved through the wilderness, cloaked in black, with eyes that gleamed like embers beneath a deep hood. They carried an ancient map, worn and frayed with age. It was no accident they approached the village, for the map held a secret that no common man should know: the location of the dragon's eye. The winds seemed to guide the traveller, pulling them ever closer to Argona, and with each step, the eye's legend grew sharper in their mind. They did not come for fortune, nor fame. They came for something far more elusive: answers. The traveller sought the eye not for its promise of power, but for the vision it could grant. The future was a riddle, and the eye was the key. The village of Argona awaited its visitor, though it knew not who or what was about to arrive. And as the night deepened, a sense of unease settled over the land, as if the very earth itself shivered at what was to come. The dragon's eye, long hidden, was waking, and soon it would see once more. The village of Argona had always lived in the shadow of old tales, but the oracle's warning changed everything. The prophecy she spoke of, though veiled in cryptic words, echoed through every corner of the village. It was as if the winds themselves carried her voice, whispering it to every ear, spreading like wildfire among the villagers. For days, no one dared speak aloud of the coming of the eye, though it weighed on their hearts like a stone. The elders, hunched with age and heavy with the knowledge of old stories, gathered in secret, as was their way. They met in the ancient hall beneath the cliffs, where the sea's fury could not reach them, and there, in the dim candlelight, they debated the meaning of the oracle's words. The eldest among them, a man with eyes clouded by time yet still sharp with wisdom, was the first to break the silence. His voice, gravelly with age, filled the room, though it was soft. The eye has not been spoken of for generations. It was lost to time, buried beneath ruin and earth. The oracle's words bring it back, and with it, the danger that once stalked our ancestors. We must prepare. But how does one prepare for something as intangible as a legend? For years, the villagers had lived their lives, toiling the fields, fishing the stormy seas, and raising their children with little more than the echoes of old stories to guide them. Now, the past seemed to rise like a spectre, demanding attention. Some elders believed the prophecy was a warning to stay away from the eye, to let it remain buried in whatever forgotten place it rested. Others, however, were not so certain. One among them, a woman whose hair had begun to turn silver with age, leaned forward, her eyes narrowing in the flickering light. The eye has always been a thing of mystery, but it was not always seen as a curse. Our ancestors believed it had the power to bring wisdom, to show the future, yes, but also to guide us through it. Perhaps we need not fear it. Perhaps it could be a gift. The elder shook his head, his gaze far away. A gift, or a curse. The eye shows too much. It sees too far. And when one knows too much, they begin to unravel the threads of time itself. There are things that should not be seen. As they debated, the air in the hall grew thick, as if the very stones of the ancient structure were listening, holding their breath for what might come next. No matter their opinions, one truth bound them all. Someone would come for the eye. It was only a matter of time. The oracle's words had foretold this. Her prophecy, though spoken in riddles, had been clear enough. A traveller will come, and with them, the eye shall awaken. Outside the village, the traveller drew closer. With each passing day, they felt the weight of destiny settling on their shoulders, like a cloak too heavy to bear yet too vital to discard. The map in their possession was no ordinary thing. It had been passed down through generations, each new owner warned of the dangers it revealed. Few had dared to follow its path, but the traveller had no choice. There were questions that could not be answered by any mortal means. Questions about fate, about the delicate web of time, about the world itself. The eye would provide those answers. Or so the traveller hoped. By the time the village came into view, dusk had fallen. Shadows stretched long over the landscape, and the sea roared in the distance, its voice low and haunting. Argona was a place that seemed suspended between worlds, where the cliffs met the sky and the ocean stretched out into infinity. It was no accident that this village had been chosen by the fates to harbour the prophecy. It had always been a place of mystery, a threshold between the known and the unknown. The travellers' steps slowed as they entered the village, the air heavy with an otherworldly quiet. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flicker of candlelight through shuttered windows. It was as if the village itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment. In the centre of the village, the oracle's hut stood like a sentinel, its door slightly ajar. The traveller hesitated before stepping toward it, drawn by something unseen, something that whispered in the wind. As they approached, a figure appeared in the doorway. An old woman, her eyes milky white, her hair thin and wild around her face. She said nothing at first, but her gaze pierced through the traveller, as if she saw beyond flesh and bone, beyond time itself. "You've come," she said, her voice a rasp, barely more than a breath. "The eye knows you." The traveller felt a chill creep down their spine, but they stood their ground. "I need to find it," they said, their voice steady, though their heart beat with uncertainty. The oracle's lips curled into a faint, knowing smile. "It has already found you." And with that, the door to the hut creaked open wider, as if inviting the traveller into the unknown, where the future waited, hidden in the shadow of the dragon's eye. The village of Argona had never known strangers, not ones that stayed at least. The cliffs that shielded it from the world also kept outsiders at bay, and those who came through were few and far between. But on the night the traveller arrived, it was as though the village itself sensed a shift in the winds. Eyes peered out from behind weathered shutters, drawn to the figure who moved through the village square, with a purpose that stirred unease in the hearts of those watching. Clad in a cloak as dark as the void between stars, the traveller's face remained hidden, a shadow beneath the hood. Yet there was something about their presence that sent a shiver through the air, as though an invisible weight pressed down upon the land. The wind, usually a constant companion to the cliffs, seemed to still in their wake. The village, once noisy with the sound of waves crashing against rocks, had grown quiet, too quiet. No one approached the traveller, and the traveller did not seek company. They moved with a singular focus, their eyes, hidden though they were, fixed ahead, drawn inexorably toward the oracle's hut at the far edge of the village. Each step was deliberate, as if the path had already been walked, as if this moment had already been seen. There was an energy that followed the traveller, an unseen current that crackled through the air, disturbing the stillness. The villagers, sensing the weight of fate, whispered in hushed tones from the safety of their homes. "Is this the one from the oracle's vision?" some asked, their voices trembling. "Has the eye chosen its bearer?" But no one dared to venture out. Not yet. The traveller, feeling the weight of those unseen eyes, paused briefly in the centre of the village. Their gaze swept the narrow streets, taking in the clustered homes with their moss-covered roofs and crooked chimneys. The village of Argona was a place steeped in old magic, the kind that had long since faded from most corners of the world, but lingered here, hidden beneath layers of time and secrecy. The traveller could feel it in the air, thick and almost tangible, a web of energy that connected the village to something greater, something ancient. They resumed their walk, each footstep a soft echo against the cobblestone path. The oracle's hut loomed ahead, small and unassuming, yet more imposing than any castle. It was a place of power, and the traveller could feel its pull like the tug of a string on their heart. The wind picked up again, just a gentle breeze, as if to remind them of the world they were about to leave behind. With a hand that trembled ever so slightly, the traveller reached for the door, pausing only for a moment before pushing it open. The air inside was thick with the scent of herbs and smoke, an ancient aroma that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 untold stories. The room was dim, lit only by a single flickering candle on a table in the corner. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and curling like serpents in the dark. At the far end of the room, the oracle sat in her usual place. A worn chair carved from ancient oak, her thin, bony hands resting in her lap. She didn't look up when the traveller entered. She didn't need to. Her blind eyes saw what no one else could, and she knew the traveller's face even though it remained hidden beneath the cloak. "You've come," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the rustling of leaves. "I saw this moment in the threads of time. Long have you walked the path toward the eye?" The traveller said nothing at first, merely pulling back their hood to reveal a face weathered by years of journeying. Sharp eyes, dark as the abyss, met the oracle's sightless gaze. Though their face was young, there was an agelessness to them, a sense of having seen more than most could bear. The traveller's lips parted, and their voice, soft but laced with something unspoken, filled the small room. "The eye," they said, their words hanging in the air like a question. "It calls to me." The oracle tilted her head, her lips curling into a smile that was neither kind nor cruel, but something in between, something otherworldly. "The eye calls to many," she replied, her voice like the whisper of wind through ancient trees. "But few are those who answer." The traveller stepped forward, their heart pounding in their chest. They had come so far, guided by an invisible thread of destiny that had led them to this forgotten village, to this moment. They could feel the weight of the eye's power, even though it was hidden far away, buried in the depths of a forgotten temple. It was as though the gem itself was alive, watching, waiting. "The future," the traveller murmured. "I need to see it." The oracle's smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet knowing. "The future is not as simple as you believe. The eye shows all, but with each vision comes a price. Are you willing to pay it?" The traveller's silence spoke volumes. They had already sacrificed much, more than anyone knew, on the path that had brought them here. But this, the eye, would be their final trial. The oracle reached into the folds of her robe and withdrew a small, intricately carved box. She placed it on the table before her, her gnarled fingers tracing its surface with reverence. "In here," she whispered, "lies the key to the temple, the place where the eye rests. Once you take this, your journey cannot be undone." The traveller stared at the box, feeling the weight of the moment. They reached out, their fingers brushing the wood, and in that instant, the room seemed to pulse with a hidden energy, a power as old as time itself. The eye had seen them, and it was waiting. The wind had changed. It whispered through the trees, carrying secrets older than the earth itself. The traveller, clutching the intricately carved box from the oracle, now moved through the dense forest that surrounded Argona. Above, the sky was a dull, oppressive grey, as though the heavens had veiled themselves in mourning for what was to come. The forest grew darker the deeper they ventured, the trees stretching like skeletal fingers toward the fading light. The path to the temple was not a road known to most, and for good reason. The map, now unfolded in the traveller's hand, was nearly useless, its ink faded by time, the lines barely visible. But the traveller knew something that ink could not convey. There was a pull, a whisper in the air that guided them. It was the eye. Even from its hidden sanctuary, it called to them, a song of power sung only to those with the courage to listen. As the traveller pushed through the thick undergrowth, the silence grew palpable. No birds sang in this part of the forest. No creatures stirred in the brush. It was as though the world held its breath, watching the traveller move forward with the weight of destiny pressing down upon their shoulders. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground beneath their feet was reluctant to let them pass, to allow them to get closer to the ancient power that had slumbered for so long. The stories had spoken of the temple, of course, but they were always vague, legends spun from fragments of truth, embellished by centuries of retelling. Some said the temple had been built by an ancient race long before men walked the earth. Others whispered that it was not built at all, but grown from the bones of the dragon whose eye still burned within it. The truth, as with all things tied to the eye, was hidden beneath layers of time and mystery. Hours passed as the traveller pressed deeper into the forest. The trees grew denser, their branches weaving together to form a canopy so thick that even the pale daylight could not penetrate it. Darkness surrounded them, but they were undeterred. The pull of the eye grew stronger with every step, like an invisible tether drawing them forward. And then, as the forest seemed to close in completely, the traveller saw it, a faint glimmer of light through the trees. It wasn't sunlight, nor the glow of a fire. It was something otherworldly, a soft, pulsing light that flickered in time with the traveller's heartbeat. They quickened their pace, pushing aside the thick branches and stepping into a clearing unlike anything they had ever seen. There, before them, stood the temple. It was nothing like the grand structures of men, no towering spires or ornate carvings. The temple was a ruin, half sunken into the earth, its stone walls covered in moss and vines, as though nature itself had tried to reclaim it. The stones were weathered, cracked by the passing of countless centuries. But there was a presence to the place, an aura that hummed with an ancient power. The traveller stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the temple. It was smaller than they had imagined, more unassuming, but they knew better than to be fooled by appearances. This place held the eye, and that was enough. Slowly they stepped forward, their footsteps barely audible on the soft earth. The entrance to the temple was little more than a jagged opening in the stone, a gaping maw that seemed to beckon them inward. The light, that strange, pulsing glow, emanated from within, and the traveller knew without doubt that it came from the eye. Their heart pounded in their chest as they approached, the air growing colder with each step. At the threshold of the temple, the traveller hesitated. The stories of those who had come before, who had sought the eye and failed, filled their mind. Some had never returned. Others had come back, their eyes empty, their souls lost to the visions they had seen. The eye did not reveal the future without cost, and yet the traveller's purpose burned too bright to turn back now. With a deep breath, they stepped inside. The interior of the temple was cold, the air thick with dust and the scent of old stone. The walls were lined with carvings, dragons coiled and fierce, their eyes wide and unblinking, watching all who entered. The light, that soft rhythmic glow, led the traveller down a narrow corridor, deeper and deeper into the heart of the temple. And then they saw it. In the centre of a small circular chamber, resting atop a stone pedestal, lay the eye. The gemstone was far more than the traveller had imagined. It was not a simple stone, as the stories had claimed. It was alive, glowing with a fiery light that seemed to pulse with each beat of the traveller's heart. The eye was the colour of molten gold, swirling with flecks of crimson and black. And as the traveller approached, they could feel its power radiating through the air, a heat that pressed against their skin. For a long moment, the traveller simply stood there, staring at the eye. The weight of what they had sought for so long lay before them, and yet, now that it was within reach, they hesitated. The eye seemed to beckon them closer, its light flickering like the flame of a dying candle. And the traveller, unable to resist any longer, stepped forward. They reached out, their fingers trembling as they neared the gemstone surface. The air around them seemed to still, the temple holding its breath. And then, with the slightest touch, the eye awakened. The moment the traveller's fingertips brushed the surface of the dragon's eye, the world shifted. The air, once heavy and still, crackled with unseen energy. It was as if the very temple held its breath, waiting. The light emanating from the eye flared, burning gold, filling the small chamber with a brilliance that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. For a heartbeat, everything seemed suspended, time itself holding its breath. And then, with a rush that felt like falling, the traveller was pulled into the vision. It began in darkness, complete, consuming, as if the very fabric of existence had been swallowed by a void. But from within that blackness, shapes began to form, vague at first, indistinct like shadows cast by an unseen light. And then the shadows grew sharper, and the traveller realised they were not alone. A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and cloaked, its face hidden beneath a hood. It moved slowly, deliberately, its form flickering in and out of focus, as though it were not entirely real. The traveller tried to step back, but their feet were rooted to the spot, as if the vision held them captive. The figure drew closer, and as it did, the air grew colder. Its presence was suffocating, a weight pressing down on the traveller's chest. And then it spoke, though its lips did not move. The voice was everywhere and nowhere, a whisper that curled around the traveller's mind, filling it with an ancient, unknowable terror. The eye has seen you. The words were not a warning, but a statement. Cold, final. The traveller's heart pounded in their chest as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing, but the vision was not done with them yet. The figure raised a hand, long and skeletal, and pointed toward the traveller. As it did, the shadows around them twisted and coiled, writhing like serpents. Suddenly, the darkness erupted into light, and the traveller was no longer standing in the temple. They were somewhere else, somewhere impossible. A great city stretched out before them, its towering spires gleaming beneath a blood-red sky. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the air was thick with ash and smoke. People, faceless, indistinct, ran through the streets, their screams lost in the roar of chaos that engulfed the city. Flames licked the edges of buildings, and the sky seemed to burn with a fury that was not of this world. In the midst of the destruction, the traveller saw themselves, or a version of themselves. They stood on a high platform, holding the dragon's eye aloft. Its light blazed, casting long, flickering shadows across the city. But this version of the traveller was not the same. Their face was hollow, their eyes empty, and they looked upon the burning city with indifference. The eye, its power fully unleashed, had consumed them, and the traveller knew in their bones that this vision was not just a warning. It was a glimpse of a future that could be. The traveller tried to turn away, to tear themselves from the vision, but it held them fast. The scene shifted again, the city melting away like smoke on the wind. In its place, a great battlefield appeared, the earth torn and bloodied, the sky heavy with the scent of death. Armies clashed beneath banners of forgotten kingdoms, and at the centre of it all stood the Eye, now embedded in a great, darkened crown. The figure from before, the cloaked being, wore the crown, its skeletal hand resting upon the Eye. It turned its gaze toward the traveller once more, and this time the voice spoke with more force. The future is already written. You cannot change what has been seen. But even as the words echoed in their mind, the traveller felt a flicker of something, doubt, perhaps, or defiance. The visions they were being shown felt twisted, incomplete. The Eye was powerful, yes, but its power was not absolute. It showed possibilities, threads of fate, but it did not bind them. There had to be more, Suddenly, the battlefield began to dissolve, the shadows receding like a tide, and the traveller found themselves back in the temple, standing once again before the glowing eye. The chamber was still, the air thick with the residue of the vision. The light of the eye pulsed softly, as though it had shown all it wished to show for now. The traveller's breath came in ragged gasps. Their heart thundered in their chest, the weight of the vision still pressing heavily upon them. But there was something else too, a clarity that had not been there before. The eye had shown them a future, yes, but the traveller now understood that it was only one of many. The future was fluid, a river with countless branches, and the eye could only illuminate a single path at a time. But what path was this? And why had the eye chosen to show them such destruction? The traveller stepped back from the eye, their hands trembling, their mind racing. The power of the eye was far greater than they had anticipated. But with that power came a burden, a responsibility. The future, as the cloaked figure had said, could not be changed, unless the traveller found a way to rewrite it. The eye had revealed its first secret, but the shadows of its visions lingered, casting doubt over what was yet to come. The night had grown colder since the traveller left the temple, their minds still haunted by the vision of flames and ruin. The forest, which had seemed alive with whispers on their way in, was now silent as a grave. Only the soft crunch of their footsteps broke the oppressive quiet. The eye, wrapped carefully in the folds of their cloak, pulsed faintly against their chest, a constant reminder of the weight they now carried. As they moved through the shadowed woods, a figure emerged from the trees, a familiar silhouette cutting through the darkness. The traveller's heart tightened, recognizing their companion, a fellow seeker who had journeyed with them from distant lands, bound by a common goal. This companion, Theos, had been a loyal guide through the labyrinthine paths leading to Argona. Their quiet strength had been a comfort during the long and often treacherous trek, and the traveller had come to trust them. But tonight, there was something different in Theos's stance. He stood bathed in moonlight, the silver glow sharpening the edges of his face, which was now unreadable. The traveller slowed their pace, feeling a chill creep into their bones that had nothing to do with the cold. There was a stillness in the air, thick with unspoken tension. "Did you find it?" Theos asked, his voice softer than usual, yet there was an edge to it, like a blade hidden beneath velvet. The traveller hesitated. The truth weighed heavy on their tongue, but something in Theos's gaze, the way his eyes glinted in the moonlight, caused the traveller to pause. A warning fluttered at the edges of their mind. Something about the way he stood, too still, too calculated. They could feel the pulse of the dragon's eye against their chest, a subtle heat that seemed to intensify under his gaze. "Yes," the traveller finally said, though their voice was measured. "I have it." For a moment, neither spoke. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves above, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across the forest floor. Theos's eyes never left the traveller, his expression unchanging, unreadable. Then he stepped forward, his boots sinking into the soft earth with deliberate, slow steps. "You understand what you hold, don't you?" Theos's voice was low now, almost a whisper, though it carried a weight of something darker, something the traveller had not heard in his voice before. "I do," the traveller replied cautiously. "But what is shown cannot always be trusted. The eye sees many futures, not just one." Theos stopped just a few feet away, his face half in shadow, half in the pale light of the moon. There was something unsettling in the way he smiled then, a tight, knowing smile. "Many futures, yes, but there's only one that matters, the one we choose." And then, before the traveller could react, Theos's hand moved too fast, reaching for the traveller's cloak. The traveller staggered back, instinctively clutching the eye closer to their chest. The realization came swiftly, cutting through the confusion like a blade. This was no longer the companion they had trusted. Theos's voice, once filled with camaraderie, now dripped with ambition, his eyes gleaming with hunger. "Give it to me," he demanded, stepping forward again, his hand outstretched. "You don't understand its full potential. You've seen a glimpse of what it can do. I've seen more. I know what the eye can offer: power, control, the ability to shape the future to our will." The traveller's heart raced, and the memory of the vision returned. Theos's face in the chaos, the burning city, the empty eyes of a figure consumed by the eye's power. It had been him all along. The traveller had not just seen their own future, they had seen his. "I won't let you take it," the traveller said, their voice shaking but resolute. The eye throbbed with warmth, as though feeding off the tension in the air, a living thing between them. Theos's face darkened. "You think you have a choice?" His voice was venom now, sharp and cold. "The eye is mine. It has always been mine. You were only ever meant to find it for me." The betrayal was like a knife to the traveller's heart, twisting with the realization that this had been planned from the start. Theos had never been a true companion. He had been waiting, watching, using them to do what he could not. Rage and sorrow mingled in the traveller's chest, but there was no time to process it. Theos lunged. The two clashed in the moonlight, their struggle fierce and desperate. The eye, glowing brighter with every heartbeat, slipped from the traveller's grasp in the chaos. It tumbled to the ground, rolling into the soft earth between them. Both froze, staring at the gem, its fiery glow casting long, twisting shadows over their faces. For a moment, time seemed to stop, the forest holding its breath. And then, without warning, Theos dove for the eye. The traveller moved too, but it was too late. Theos's fingers closed around the gemstone, and as soon as they did, a terrible light exploded from the eye, bathing the clearing in searing golden radiance. Theos's scream echoed through the trees, his face contorted in agony as the eye's power surged through him, uncontrolled, untamed. The traveller stumbled back, watching in horror as the light twisted around him, swallowing him whole. And then, as quickly as it had begun, the light vanished, and Theos was gone. Nothing but shadows remained. The traveller stood alone beneath the pale moon, their heart pounding in their chest. The eye lay still in the dirt, its light dim once more. The night had grown even darker after Theos vanished, the shadows in the forest thickening, as though they sought to swallow the world whole. The traveller stood there, staring at the spot where their companion had once been. The soft hum of the dragon's eye pulsing through the air like the echo of a distant heartbeat. The betrayal still burned in their chest, an ache that no amount of time could dull. But there was no time to mourn. The eye, resting on the cold earth, seemed to glow faintly, as if drawing power from the very darkness around it. The traveller hesitated before kneeling to retrieve it, their fingers trembling slightly as they wrapped around the gem. It felt warm to the touch, alive, as if it held some slumbering force within it, something ancient, something waiting. For a moment, the traveller considered leaving it behind. The eye had already shown them too much, and they feared what more it might reveal. But the power of the gemstone was undeniable, a weight they could not shake, and the visions it had shown them, the destruction, the figure in the crown, remained imprinted in their mind like the ghost of a nightmare. The wind stirred around them, soft at first, but soon it grew into a howl. The trees creaked and swayed, their branches clawing at the sky as the wind tugged at the traveller's cloak. The world seemed to shift, the air growing heavy with something far older than the forest, far older than the village of Argona. The traveller could feel it in the marrow of their bones. A presence, vast and ancient, stirring beneath the fabric of reality. The dragon was waking. The traveller had heard tales, of course, old legends passed down through generations about the great dragon whose eye now lay in their hand. A creature so powerful it had commanded the skies, bending the elements to its will. But the legends had always ended the same way, with the dragon's fall, slain by a hero whose name had been lost to time, and the eye hidden away in the temple to guard against the chaos it could unleash. But no tale had spoken of the dragon's return. No one had ever considered that the dragon's soul might linger, tethered to the gemstone that had once been its eye. The wind howled louder, and the traveller's heart raced as the earth beneath their feet began to tremble. From deep within the ground, a low, rumbling sound echoed like the growl of something immense, something that had been sleeping for far too long. The traveller gripped the eye tightly, a cold sweat breaking out across their skin. The ground split. It was not a sudden fracture, but a slow, deliberate tearing, as though the earth itself was being peeled open by invisible hands. The traveller stumbled back, their breath quickening as the ground in the clearing parted, revealing a dark chasm beneath the surface. From within that darkness, something moved, something vast, coiling through the shadows like a serpent uncoiling after centuries of sleep. The traveller felt it before they saw it, a surge of energy, raw and powerful, radiating from the depths of the earth. And then, from within the chasm, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, piercing through the darkness. They were not human eyes. No, these were eyes born of fire and shadow, molten gold swirling in their depths, burning with an intelligence far older than any mortal mind could comprehend. The dragon. The traveller's heart pounded in their chest, fear and awe warring within them as they took a step back. The dragon's form, though still hidden within the shadows of the chasm, was unmistakable. Its vast, coiling body shimmered with scales that caught the faint moonlight, reflecting it in strange, iridescent hues. Its wings, though folded, seemed to stretch beyond the limits of the clearing, casting long, undulating shadows across the forest floor. The dragon's gaze fixed on the traveller, its eyes narrowing as it regarded the one who now held its eye. And then, with a voice that was more felt than heard, it spoke. A deep, resonant sound that reverberated through the very bones of the earth. You hold what is mine. The traveller's breath caught in their throat, their fingers tightening around the eye. They had no words, no way to respond to the presence of something so ancient, so powerful. The dragon's voice seemed to shake the air itself, as though reality was bending beneath its will. For centuries I have slept, bound to this form by the greed of men and the folly of kings. The dragon's eyes blazed brighter, and the ground trembled with each word. But now I stir, summoned by your touch. You, who seek the future, have awoken the past. The traveller swallowed hard, their mind racing. The vision from the temple flashed before their eyes. The burning city, the figure in the crown, the destruction that followed. Was this the future the dragon spoke of? A future shaped by the eye's power, by its return? I don't seek power, the traveller managed to say, their voice barely more than a whisper, trembling under the weight of the dragon's gaze. I only wanted to understand, to see. The dragon's eyes gleamed with something akin to amusement, a low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. All who seek the eye desire more than they can understand. It is a curse, a gift, and a chain. And now that you hold it, you will decide the fate of more than just yourself. The traveller's grip on the eye faltered, the weight of the dragon's words pressing down on them like an unseen force. The future, as they had once believed, was not something that could be glimpsed and understood. It was a living thing, shaped by choices, by sacrifices. And now, standing before the dragon, whose power had been sealed away for centuries, the traveller realized that the future was not a path that could be predicted. It was a path that must be walked. And the first step was always the hardest. The air crackled with a tension that could not be measured, something far beyond the traveller's understanding, yet unmistakably real. The dragon, a beast of legend and nightmare, loomed before them, half shadow, half light, its eyes burning with the weight of centuries. The ground beneath the traveller's feet trembled with the remnants of the dragon's awakening, and the world felt poised on the edge of something unthinkable, as though time itself held its breath. "You will decide the fate of more than yourself," the dragon had said. The words echoed in the traveller's mind, a reminder of the burden that now lay heavy on their shoulders. The traveller clutched the eye tightly, its heat pulsing through their hand, as if alive with its own will. It seemed to thrum in response to the dragon's presence, a connection between the two that could not be severed. The vision from the temple flickered once more in the traveller's memory. Cities reduced to ashes, kingdoms crumbling, a future ruled by chaos and destruction. The eye had shown them one possible future, a path paved with power. But that path had come with a terrible cost. They took a step back, the enormity of the choice before them weighing heavier with every breath. The dragon's gaze never left them, those molten eyes watching, waiting. There was something ancient, almost melancholic, in the way it observed the traveller. It was as if the creature had lived through this moment before, as though it had seen countless others stand where the traveller now stood, each one faced with the same impossible decision. "What must I do?" the traveller asked, their voice barely audible above the wind that whispered through the trees. The dragon tilted its head slightly, the shadows shifting around it like the ripple of dark water. "There is always a price. Power does not come without sacrifice. You wish to control the future, but in doing so, you will lose yourself. The eye demands it." The traveller's heart sank. They had known somewhere deep within that it would come to this. The eye's visions were not a gift freely given. They were a trade, a transaction. To see the future, to control it, required the traveller to relinquish something of equal value. But now, standing at the edge of that decision, the reality of it struck harder than they had anticipated. "But if I choose not to?" the traveller asked, their voice trembling. "If I walk away?" The dragon's eyes gleamed, a low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. "Then the eye will remain, waiting for another to take your place. But know this, once touched, the eye never forgets. You may walk away, but it will find you again, and the choice will not grow easier." The traveller's mind raced, grappling with the impossibility of the situation. The visions had shown them futures filled with horror and destruction, futures shaped by the eye's immense power. But could they truly control it? Could anyone? The traveller glanced down at the eye, its golden light pulsing softly, as if waiting for them to make their decision. It had seen into them, revealed the darkest corners of their soul. It knew their fears, their desires, the things they would never speak aloud. And yet, it had not shown them every path. That much was clear now. The future was not fixed. It was a labyrinth of endless possibilities, each choice creating new threads of fate. But in their heart, the traveller knew what the eye wanted. To wield its power meant surrendering everything, who they were, who they might become. The eye did not just offer knowledge, it demanded control, a mastery over the forces of time that no mortal could ever truly comprehend. The traveller had seen what became of those who tried. They looked up at the dragon, its form dark against the silver light of the moon. There is no future in this that doesn't end in ruin, is there? The traveller whispered, not expecting an answer. For a moment the dragon was silent, and then it spoke, its voice softer now, though no less powerful. The eye does not see peace, it sees power, and with power comes destruction. The only peace lies in letting go. The traveller swallowed hard, their throat tight, the weight of the decision bearing down on them with crushing force. To hold the eye, to control the future, meant losing their soul to it. And to walk away meant risking it falling into the hands of another, someone who might not hesitate to use its power. There was only one way. The traveller's hand tightened around the eye, the warmth of the gem almost comforting now, as if it too sensed what was coming. Slowly, they raised it toward the dragon, offering it back to the creature from which it had come. "Take it," they whispered, their voice steady now. "Take it, and let the future be as it should, not mine to control." The dragon's eyes flared, and for a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then slowly the great beast lowered its head, its massive form coiling closer, until its snout was mere inches from the traveller's outstretched hand. With the reverence that seemed almost impossible for something so powerful, the dragon opened its mouth and the eye disappeared into its maw. The moment the eye was swallowed, the air around them changed. The oppressive weight lifted, the tremors in the earth ceased, and the wind, which had howled so fiercely, calmed into a gentle breeze. The dragon's eyes, still glowing, softened, and the ancient presence that had filled the clearing seemed to fade, as if the creature was retreating into the depths from which it had come. "You have chosen wisely," the dragon rumbled, its voice now softer, almost like the echo of a memory. "Your future is your own once more. But remember, the eye never truly leaves." With that, the dragon's great form began to dissolve into shadow, its body fading into the night, leaving only the whisper of wind and the faintest glimmer of light where the eye had once been. The traveller stood alone beneath the moon, their hearts still racing but lighter now, as though some invisible chain had been broken. The future, once clouded by the weight of destiny, was now open before them, unshaped, unwritten. And as the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, the traveller knew that their story had only just begun. The dawn was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as if the world itself had paused to reflect on what had passed in the shadowed hours of the night. The traveller stood alone, their hands still outstretched, though the dragon's eye was no longer in their grasp. The great beast had vanished into the dark, and with it the unbearable weight of the eye's presence. Yet, in the stillness, something lingered. A subtle hum, barely perceptible, but undeniably there. It pulsed through the earth beneath the traveller's feet, a rhythm that echoed in their bones. Though the eye was gone, its influence was not. The traveller felt it, like the memory of a distant storm, still rattling the windows long after the skies had cleared. The traveller lowered their hand and took a deep breath. The forest, which had felt so menacing the night before, now seemed calm. The trees bathed in the soft glow of early morning light. The winds that had once howled with the voice of ancient powers now whispered gently through the branches, as if the forest itself had exhaled in relief. But despite the outward peace, the traveller knew that something had changed. The visions shown by the eye still flickered in their mind. The burning cities, the figure in the crown, the devastation that had stretched far beyond the horizon. Those futures, those possibilities were not gone. They had only been set aside. The traveller had chosen not to wield the eye's power, but the future it had shown still existed, somewhere in the tangled web of time. The traveller's heart felt heavy with the knowledge. Was the future truly safe now, or had they merely delayed the inevitable? They couldn't shake the sense that the eye's influence ran deeper than they had realized, that its true power was something far greater than a glimpse into what was to come. Stepping forward, the traveller walked to the edge of the clearing, where the chasm had opened during the dragon's awakening. Now, the earth was whole again, as if the ground itself had healed. The dark void that had once yawned beneath their feet was gone, and in its place, the forest floor stretched out, unbroken, covered in soft moss and fallen leaves. Yet, the traveller knew the chasm hadn't truly closed. Not really. The eye had only hidden its presence once more, retreating into the shadows of the earth, waiting for the next soul who dared seek it. The traveller felt it like a faint heartbeat, deep beneath the soil, pulsing in time with the rhythm of the world. The eye would always be there, watching, waiting, and so would the dragon. The traveller turned away from the clearing, their thoughts a swirl of uncertainty. The dragon had spoken of sacrifice, of power and destruction, But there had been something more beneath its words, an understanding that the traveller had only begun to grasp. The eye was not just a tool to see the future. It was a mirror that reflected the deepest desires and fears of those who sought it. It did not merely show what could be. It revealed the soul of the one who gazed into it, and in doing so, it shaped the very future it foretold. The traveller began to walk, their feet carrying them away from the place where the dragon's eye had rested. The path before them was uncertain, but in a way, that uncertainty was a relief. For so long, they had sought the eye, hoping to find answers, to see the future clearly. But now, they realized that the future was not meant to be known with certainty. It was meant to be lived, to be shaped by choices, not by visions. The village of Argona lay ahead, its rooftops barely visible through the thickening trees. The traveller thought of the oracle, of her prophecy spoken in riddles. She had warned of the eye, of its power and the danger it posed, but she had also left room for choice. The traveller now understood that the prophecy had not been a warning of doom, but a reminder that even in the face of great power, there was always a choice. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the traveller felt a strange sense of calm settle over them. The weight of the eye was gone, but the memory of its power remained, a reminder of what had been and what could still be. Reaching the outskirts of the village, the traveller paused. The air was thick with the scent of sea salt and pine, and the sounds of everyday life drifted faintly through the trees. The distant murmur of voices, the clatter of tools. The people of Argona, unaware of the dragon's awakening, would carry on as they always had, their lives untouched by the secrets of the forest. But the traveller knew that the eye's shadow would always be there, just beneath the surface, a ripple in the calm waters of time. The traveller took one last look at the forest behind them, the place where the eye had once rested, and where it would one day rest again. Then, with a deep breath, they turned toward the village and walked into the light of the new day. For now, the future was free, and that was enough. But the traveller could not forget the dragon's final words, whispered like a shadow across their mind. The eye never truly leaves. And so, as the traveller disappeared into the village, the dragon's eye, hidden deep within the earth, continued to pulse softly, its true power waiting to be discovered once more, waiting for the next one to seek it out.